Are you struggling to grow microgreens? I've talked with hundreds of people, some with major success in growing microgreens, and some people who just have had challenges. There have been some things that I found that have stayed consistent. When I talked with those 100 people, what I found was that the seeds that they were using were crucial to whether they succeeded or failed. And a big reason is that when you get your more challenging microgreens, they have extra steps that you need to know in order to make sure that you're gonna have success. So in this video, we're gonna talk about the seeds that you want to avoid if you are a beginner. So with this video, you will know which microgreens you do not want to grow. And then once you get used to the easier microgreens and you want a little challenge, then you can come back to this video and learn how to grow them so that you can say that you grew the hardest microgreens. And they're really fun once you know how to make those minor adjustments. So let's get to it. Later on in this video, I will share with you a secret tip on how you can grow the luscious microgreens. Today, I'm gonna tackle the top 3 hardest microgreens to grow, and most importantly, how you can master them. So let's tackle those challenges together. Hi, I'm Connor Hebel, also known as the Phytonutrient King. And here at Amelia Island Microgreens, we're super excited to be the go-to place for microgreen learning. And we love seeing you growing your microgreens right at home. After facing my own health struggles, microgreens became a vital part of my recovery. Now I'm excited to help you grow your own fresh, nutritious, and delicious microgreens right at home. So let's get started on the first hard microgreen to grow. And this one is actually a variety that I've just found is usually hard to grow. This is your herbs. Which, you know, it's kind of ironic that as microgreens, herbs are the hardest to grow, but when you're gardening and you're growing them into the mature plant, they're the easiest ones to grow. The reason why I say herbs are really hard to grow is because they typically take about 2 weeks to grow, whereas your standard microgreens take about 7 days. So it's like almost double the time. For example, I've been growing basil microgreens for a local restaurant, and it takes me about 2 weeks for basil microgreens. And the microgreens are half the size as the microgreens that I usually grow, like broccoli or collards that are super easy, which are it's like that much of a difference. It's incredibly slow. And so if you're looking for fast results, don't go with an herb to start with. And if there is an herb that you really want to grow, then I would suggest looking online, is this herb easy to grow? Because there are a couple exceptions to this, but for most of the herbs, they're more challenging. When you want to start growing herbs, just know that it's gonna take a longer time, and there are typically a couple extra steps. Like for example, with your basil microgreens, when you mist them, they get this like gelatinous gel on the outside, and it can be kind of off-putting. The other thing about herb microgreens is that their seeds vary a lot in how they look. So your cilantro microgreen seeds are gonna look a lot different than your basil microgreen seeds, which is pretty cool. It's really fascinating. But when you're learning how to spread your microgreens evenly, that makes it more challenging, especially if you're trying out different varieties. That's one of the things that I love about the more easy microgreens to grow is they almost all have a very similar seed feel, and it makes it so much easier to spread it. And the other thing is that they all have their own unique quirks to them. You have like your cilantro microgreens, which have this, it kind of reminds me of like a crescent moon type of thing. It's a little different than that, but it does kind of have that look to it. And sometimes you have to pick off the shells. They're really cool microgreens though, and I really enjoy them. And just know this is not like the absolute hardest. This is your more intermediate, so it's not super hard. So now with that, how do you grow your herb microgreens? Well, that is a great question. The very first thing I would recommend is to go online and research, how do I grow cilantro microgreens? Just look up, learn a bit more. It's not one of those that you can just go ahead and plant. You want to know what those little tweaks are, because each herb has a little different tweak. And if you're interested in learning more about that, let me know in the comments below, especially if there's a specific herb microgreen you want me to cover, and I will go ahead and make a video talking about the step-by-step process for that, because each herb is a little differently. So before I get to the second microgreen that I would suggest avoiding as a beginner, I would like to share with you a story. So I was at a vendor market and someone came up and they were talking about how they had a challenge growing microgreens. They did super well with chia seeds. It went amazing. And then they tried sunflower. And if anyone has ever tried sunflower, they will know the challenge with it. You have really great success with it, or you have horrible success. And it really varies. And you could do excellent with one set of seeds and horribly with the next, even from the same company. I've bought black oil sunflower from Trueleaf, and one bag was incredibly great, and then another one didn't work so well. Because even within the same company, the seed quality, the seed germination rate varies so much. It is definitely one of those more finicky microgreens to grow. And so what I'll share with you in a minute is some of the ways that you can help avoid the big pitfalls of having failed attempts at sunflower. So before you try sunflower, I highly recommend trying some of the easier microgreens to grow. The first thing you want to do is make sure that your seed quality is really good. You want to make sure that your seeds are pathogen tested. And the reason is that if you've been in the sprouting community and you heard about the big E. coli scares, that was because people were getting seeds that were tainted with pathogens like E. coli and salmonella. While they were sprouting, all those pathogens were germinating. Because you're eating so close to that seed, you have to make sure that your seed quality is good. And you also want to make sure that your germination rate is really good, especially with a sunflower. The second thing that you want to make sure of is that you are soaking your seeds, but you want to soak it between 4 to 8 hours. You don't want to over soak, because if you over soak, your sunflower microgreens are more likely to mold. And that brings me to the third one. Sunflower microgreens do have a high chance of mold, so I would highly recommend creating a hydrogen peroxide base. You want to use food grade hydrogen peroxide with your sunflower microgreens. You want to use about 3%. What I would suggest doing is just adding a little bit of 3% of the food grade hydrogen peroxide, and make sure it's food grade, into the bowl that you're soaking your sunflower seeds in. You want to make sure that they won't mold again. And then after that, you can use a little spray bottle and just spray on top of them that food grade hydrogen peroxide. As well as if you start to notice mold in whether it's sunflower microgreens or any of the other microgreens you're growing, you can go ahead and just spray a little bit of that food grade hydrogen peroxide on there. Another thing that I like to do that doesn't come with as much of a risk of food grade hydrogen peroxide, because food grade hydrogen peroxide can potentially damage your microgreens, is using cinnamon. So I like to get a little bit of ground cinnamon and I just put it in my cocoa coir, my soil, and that really helps bring down the risk of mold. The other thing you can do is have really good ventilation, have a fan nearby, and that'll help ventilate, keep some of that mold down. We even have a fan running in our grow room when we're growing our microgreens, just to make sure that we're reducing that risk of mold. Do you like going to the movies and eating a nice bucket of popcorn? Well, then this microgreen is gonna really interest you. Corn microgreens are a really unique microgreen to grow because they require a really different setup than your average. In fact, corn microgreens never see the light. If they start seeing the light and they start going from that yellow color to more of a green, they're gonna start tasting like grass. So they have this really strange setup where you get this big black dome and you have to leave the corn microgreens in this dome, or otherwise, if they start seeing the light, they are gonna taste like grass. So you definitely have a different experience growing these microgreens than your average microgreen. And if you don't keep this dome well ventilated, then there's gonna be a higher chance that your microgreens are gonna have mold. The great thing is a lot of the grow systems for corn microgreens already have a built-in ventilation system. If you want a deeper dive into how to grow corn microgreens, let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to make one for you. Which of these challenging microgreens have you had experience growing? Let me know in the comments below and I'd love to hear how it went. If there's any tips that you found that are super helpful, let us know, because if someone is having those same challenges, they might see it too and be able to take those tips and those tweaks and really be able to grow those more tricky microgreens. If you would like to go from beginner to confident microgreen grower, don't miss out on our free 10-part series that will teach you everything about microgreens. Head over to AmeliaIslandMicrogreens.com/101 or click the link in the description below to get started. If you like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe so that you don't miss our next video that's going to be on how to make sure your microgreens germinate properly. Remember that secret tip I mentioned when growing microgreens? It's coming up in just a minute. So now let's go into this secret tip. If you want to get really into the fine minutia of making your microgreens grow the best, then this is a tip that you're going to be interested in. Do you have one preference in music that just every time you listen to it, you love it and it makes you feel so much happier? Well, microgreens are the same. Studies have shown that microgreens tend to grow better with classical music. I would really suggest looking into Dr. Emoto's work. It's on how when we say things like, I hate you or I love you, it actually changes the molecular structure of water. And since we're made up of water and plants are made up of water, it also affects our molecular structure too. I sing a little tune, I tell them how beautiful they are and how much I love them, as well as I just pay attention to them. So now that you know some of the hardest microgreens to grow, you may be wondering why, despite your best efforts, they just aren't germinating. Well, in this next video, we're gonna dive deep into some of those things that you can do to make your microgreens grow and be the luscious microgreens around. So hop over to this next video and I look forward to seeing you.